Okay, everybody, we have reached the bottom of the hour, so let's get started with today's L10 webinar, Real-World Strategies for Filling Gaps, Time, Budget, and People, sponsored by CMR Institute. My name is Tim Tosby. I'm Editorial Director for L10. It's my pleasure to welcome you today and to serve as a host of our program. I'm going to start here with some housekeeping items, including, most importantly, how you can submit questions and interact with our speakers today. Now, I see there's a mistake here. We are planning a 30-minute session for you today. Today's a special webinar, a 30-minute session. This is actually the first 30-minute webinar we've done with L10, and we've asked you a question in the follow-up survey. I'll tell you about it in a moment, about the 30-minute format. So we'd love to get some feedback from you on that. You'll notice that your phones are on mute. So any questions you might have, please type them into the questions module, the questions window there in that control panel on the right side of your screen. Type them in, hit submit, and we'll get to the questions as quickly as possible throughout today's webinar or toward the end in the Q&A. But I always do urge people to submit any questions or comments they have along the way. Also, I wanted to point out on the handouts window on that control panel, there are several items in there you might want to download. You can just highlight any of these titles and download them to your desktop. We have some L10 information on our 2018 fall calendar of events, information on the 2019 conference coming up next June, and some information on our Science of Learning workshops that we're having in November. I'll tell you more about those later in today's program. And also a couple of documents from CMR Institute that you might find useful as companions to today's webinar. Today's webinar is being recorded and will be archived for on-demand access on the L10 website. We're also going to send you a follow-up email about 1 hour after today's webinar ends with a link to that recording. So you can either look for it on the website or through that email, but certainly feel free to access it for the refreshers you might want after today's webinar or to share with any of your colleagues. And I mentioned that follow-up survey as you leave today's webinar. A follow-up survey will pop up on a separate browser window. Please do take a moment when you today, look for that survey and share your thoughts with us. We would appreciate that. And along those lines, if I can help you with anything around the webinar or your L10 membership, my email address is right here. Share it later in today's program as well, and certainly don't hesitate to reach out. Okay, with all of that said, I'm going to turn things over to Carrie Garrett from CMR Institute. Carrie's going to tell us more about our speakers today and take it from here. Carrie, thanks for joining us.
Welcome everyone to CMR Institute and L10's first mini webinar session modeled after the wildly popular Learning Labs at the L10 conference. Today we want to talk about those three things that we all need to get our jobs done: time, budget, and talent. Our theme today is when something's missing, you notice. If you're missing one or more of these things, you are undoubtedly taking notice. Before we get started, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Carrie Garrett, Director of Learning Strategy at CMR Institute, like Tim said. CMR Institute is by definition considered an off-the-shelf provider because we do offer clients turnkey blended learning solutions that can be put into place in a matter of hours. We also offer so much more than that and consider ourselves a partner to our clients in helping them achieve their goals and fill their gaps. The question we're addressing and hopefully overcoming today is, what is your gap? We all have gaps, and as our theme implies, typically when something's missing, we notice. The pressure may be to ignore the gap or to do more with less, but taking the time to identify the gap and then prioritizing the resources you do have around that will only make your training strategy stronger. But before we go any further, I want to talk about a place where we don't have any gaps, and that's in our speakers for this session. Today we'll be talking to Joseph DeLosa, Director of North American Skills Training at Pfizer, Ryan Malama, Sales Training Manager of Sustainability Solutions at Stryker, and Brittany Conrad from CMR is joining me. She's the Client Solutions Project Manager. In your work life, you have three major resources at your disposal: your time, your budget, and your people or talents. These can help you to accomplish any task your company asks of you. And as long as you have enough of the first two and the right mix of the third one, you'll be successful. But tell me this, when is the last time you heard someone say, gosh, I just have too much time to complete this project, or my budget for this important initiative is way too big, or even my team has enough skills? Nobody says this, and with good reason, because it's never true. So think about your company, your team, or a specific project you're currently working on. What resource do you believe you're missing the most? I know most of us would say that we could use more of all three, but think of the one that you're missing the most right now. And Tim is starting a poll for us. So if you wouldn't mind choosing what resource you're missing the most, time, budget, or talent.
Well, Carrie and Brittany, the results are coming in very quickly here.
Perfect.
I ask everybody to just wrap. Yeah, thank you. Folks, if you could just wrap up your voting, I'll close the poll here in a second, and we'll keep the program moving ahead for
you. All right, Tim, you think we're ready?
I think we're ready. Everybody, thanks for sharing. Let me go ahead and close the poll, and here are the results.
Okay, so most people, well, 40 votes is actually pretty even between budget and time, but most people seem to not be missing the talent. So that's really interesting. So Tim, can you take us back to the PowerPoint? Perfect, thank you. So let's talk about time first. It can feel like time is never on our side, especially when we think about creating and implementing new training. Using the question function, write in how many hours you think it takes to create 1 hour of level 2 e-learning. So level 2 would include a lot of interactivity, exercises, maybe allowing learners to perform virtual like try it exercises, and includes use of multimedia like audio, video, and animation. So if you could just use the questions function and type in what you all think it would take to produce hours-wise, how much it would take. Okay, we've got 8 hours. Okay, some other results are coming in. A couple people said 8. Anybody else want to put in? Okay, we got 20, 25, 30, another 25, 10. Okay, all right, so this might be surprising. So most typical level 2 projects take 184 hours to create 1 finished hour of learning. Now this figure comes from a white paper called How Long Does It Take to Create Learning? And it's by the Chapman Alliance, and you can find that at www.chapmanalliance.com. And so, you know, when we were going through the questions, it was between, 8 and 30, 40 hours. So this can really seem like a lot, but let's talk about that a little bit. So number one, if you're talking about voice over PowerPoint e-learning with little to no activity, then yes, that can be done much faster. But depending on the topic and how much transfer of learning you're looking for, that may not be the best avenue for your learners, although it is faster to develop. Number two, let's think about all of the people that are involved with 1 hour of finished learning. Your subject matter experts' time, your designer's time, your audio talent's time it takes to publish and QA and test the content, etc. So once I started thinking of the project from start to finish, from starting with a blank Word document to a polished course of activities and audio, and the various people and roles that are involved, I could see how that time added up pretty quickly. So why does this matter? This is a good stat to have around when someone comes and asks you, if we want to do a new training, how much time would that take? It's also a good way to think about the hours you have available on your team and how you're best using them. This figure also just includes the initial creation of the e-learning. It does not include the time to keep that training updated. All right, so now let's look at cost. Let's talk about some money. Using the question function again, let me know how much you think it costs overall to produce that 1 hour finished e-learning that we just talked about. So everybody could just take a minute and put in the question box. How much do you think? All right, $15,000. Anybody else have any guesses they want to submit? $10,000, $30,000, another $10,000. $50,000. All right, so let's take a look. The average internal cost to create 1 hour of level 2 e-learning is $18,583. Now this is an average for the initial cost to develop the 1 hour of the level 2 e-learning that we talked about earlier, but obviously costs can range. And why does this figure matter to us? A lot of us are in or are preparing for budget season and trying to use our dollars for the most impact. Keep in mind this is the initial cost for development, but this does not include costs to keep existing content updated. So we've talked about time and budget needed to create e-learning. Now let's talk about the people you'll need to get it all done. These are the types of people that you'll need to complete an e-learning project based on the needed tasks included in Level 2 e-learning. Does your company or team have dedicated people for each of these roles, or do you have someone wearing several of these hats? Some of you may be teams of one where you're doing everything. Also, something else to think about is that these people may be available in your organization. So let's take subject matter experts, for example. But they may not have the dedicated time or be able to help you when you always need it. And that's something to plan for when embarking on any learning initiative. Do you have all of the right people you need to get the work done? Let's switch gears just for a second. If you had to guess, how many times do you think macro has changed in the past year, and how many times has CMR Institute updated our macro content? So, Tim, could we switch to that poll and let's have people pick how many times they think macro has changed just this year? A is 1 time, B is 3 times, and C is 5 times.
Thanks, Carrie, and the results are coming in quickly again. Everybody, if you can make your choices here, we'll close the poll and keep the program moving ahead for
you. All right, Tim, can we take a look at the responses?
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Everybody, thanks again for sharing. We appreciate your input here. I'm going to close the poll, and Carrie, here are the results.
Okay, great. All right, so most people think it's changed 3 times. All right, Tim, can we go back to the PowerPoint if you don't mind? All right, so for those, most people said 3, but for those of you who said 5, you would actually be correct. CMR Institute just released our 5th update to our macro module and interactive macro job aid just last week. And who knows, we have a second micro webinar session planned for October 30th. It could be up to 6 times by that point. So what does this mean in terms of gaps, and why do we bring this up? When planning for the future, it's necessary to set aside the hours and the money and the people to keep your content updated. So now let's hear from our experts about what their experience have been trying to fill their gaps. So we're going to speak with Ryan Malama. And Ryan, would you mind sharing with us, what was your gap? In your situation, what was holding you back from success? Was it time or budget or talent or some combination?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a little bit of all 3 for all of us. But when I did a SWOT analysis of both myself and our field force, it was really just understanding the world that we live in. And it's a good kind of segue with that last question of how many times macro has changed. I didn't even know what macro was, not even almost 6 months ago. And starting to learn about this and how it affects our business. 10 years ago, our products, at least our divisions, were kind of a differentiator for hospitals and how they approach savings. And now, fast forward, it's really become almost standard of practice. And we also have competitors that have very similar products, and sometimes they're more competitively priced. And so we need to think differently about how we present our value prop to our customers. Our customers are changing the way that they do business. And so really, I needed help understanding what that is. I know our products very well and kind of where we're going as a company, but understanding the world that our customers live in was extremely important to us, because if we can't, I guess, empathize or understand the pressures that they're facing, then our value prop could be off, and it was in some instances. So we really needed help filling that gap.
So Ryan, can you share why you turned to off-the-shelf training? What led you to partner with an off-the-shelf provider, and what was your experience like?
Yeah, so the short answer is, and I kind of got to it, of the gap was a gap in myself. Macro is changing a lot. It affects all of our hospitals. That's a question I get, is what hospitals does this affect? And macro affects every single one of them. They don't really have an opportunity to not participate. And if I can't understand it, then I can't really articulate it. And what we're realizing too is that in addition to helping our reps understand it, we really need to be providing tools for our reps to help articulate the value to their accounts and how our products can help accounts really position themselves more competitively to participate in macro. So it was really a speed thing too. I mean, maybe I could have read a lot and kind of self-educated, but getting myself educated at the same time as the field was really important.
That sounds great. So Ryan, can you share with us, how you spend your time now, and how do you decide what to do yourself and what to partner with others on? And if you have any tips or tricks you can share for prioritization with our audience, that would be great.
Yeah. So, and I talked a little bit about this just in the last question, but I try to be a master of what nobody else can do, what I don't believe any other off-the-shelf provider could do, and that's our business. Where are we going? What are we doing? What are our core competencies? And that's really where I try to focus my sales training efforts with the field. Things I am not a master of. I'm not a master of negotiations, territory management, certainly industry knowledge, as I just talked about. We talk about some leadership training for some of our sales leaders. That stuff I'm not an expert in, and I do need help there. Where I am an expert is taking the information from what we've learned and how it impacts the industry and articulating that into how it works with our products. So now once I've learned and once our field feels comfortable with information about the industry or these skills, we can then develop tools and I can help our reps use those tools. So I'm really leveraging the information that's been taught, and then really working on how do you leverage that information now with our products in our company? But I really want to be a master of our core competencies, and then really lean on the experts for their core competencies of being experts in their field.
Thank you, Ryan, so much for sharing those insights.
Yeah, thank you.
We have the same questions that we want to ask for Joe. Joe, would you mind sharing, what was your gap? Similar questions to Ryan, was it time, budget, or talent, or some combination of those things?
So I think I came down on time as well. When you look at, even when we're working with our subject matter experts or our talent, time is an issue for them as well to work with us to develop some of the content that we're looking to put out. So I would say that time is probably our biggest challenge when you look at some of the stats that you showed, and you only utilized the topic of macro, but there's also, accountable care organization, IDNs, 340B pricing. So when you look at all the information that we're trying to get out to our representatives and managers, time definitely was our biggest gap.
Okay, great. And so would you say that's why you turned to off-the-shelf training, was because of that, the time it would take to create training?
When you look at, and again, I'm going to speak to my world, which is actually the skills world. I know Ryan mentioned, products and understanding that. I live in the skills world of not only introducing a particular skill, but then in the world of continuous development. So how do we continue to build on those skills? So jumping to question number 3, a lot of my time is working on our core curriculum and what I deliver. So I can stay on top of that, continue to develop that and update that. And that's where I spend my time and delivering that. But when you look at the size of our sales force and all the colleagues that we want to continually develop their skills, then we would go to an off-the-shelf vendor for a number of reasons. One, what they offer, so we can offer a variety of skills, a lot of offerings that they keep their skills up to date, and also the time. It's up to those folks to maintain all of that content versus that falling on myself.
Great. Those are some great insights from a client perspective. Thank you, Joe. Now I'm going to turn it over to Brittany Conrad. She's the Project Manager of Client Solutions with CMR, and she's going to walk us through a fun bucket exercise. Thanks, Carrie. Now we're going to spend some time talking about the common training overflows and leaks. So imagine this bucket on the screen is your training bucket. It represents you and everything that you're responsible for. The bucket is a certain size and can only hold a certain amount of volume, as we all know. That means when you have more to do than fits in the bucket, you have overflow. Things aren't getting done because you don't have the time or the budget to get them done. Missing talent or resources are another way that you could be constrained. Missing a key skill or a resource on your team is like having a leak or a hole in your bucket. No matter how much you try to fill it, that lack of skill or resource won't allow your team to do their job to the best of their ability. The upside, though, is when you recognize that your bucket is full or that you have a leak. This is when you have the opportunity to maximize relationships with off-the-shelf providers and fill in your gaps. Remove some water from your bucket, plug the leak, whatever metaphor you want to go with. You must decide what your bucket can truly hold. Is your bucket big enough? Does it have any holes? Is the training topic specific to your company? So now you'll see an off-the-shelf bucket appear. So product training, this is something that Ryan mentioned a fair amount. Which bucket do you think that this topic should typically belong in? Most on the call would probably agree the U bucket. As Ryan mentioned, you know your product best, and your team should spend their valuable time ensuring that this training is the best, updated, and as interactive as possible. However, look at the topic of the changing healthcare landscape. Now here is a great example to transfer some of that out of the U bucket and put it into the off-the-shelf bucket. You can let someone else worry about the constant changes and the updating and the headaches of things like MACRA. So other topics, what about these? Account management, business planning, career development, compliance, role-based, coaching, and therapeutics. Think about these topics. Where do they truly belong? I'll turn it back to Carrie to give us some advice on how to best determine the best bucket for each need.
Thank you, Brittany. When prioritizing what to focus your time, budget, and talent on, you can ask yourself a few questions to help determine whether you can build something in-house or whether it's an option for you to partner with a reputable off-the-shelf provider. First question is the topic specific to my company? Like product training. If it is, this is probably something you should prioritize for in-house development, as Brittany said, as no one knows your stuff better than you and your team. Second question is, do I have the resources? Do you have enough resources and the right resources for what you need to accomplish? Do you have time but no people, or do you have budget but no time, or some combination of these factors? Think about the things we discussed today to determine your gaps. Third question is, could I purchase this from an off-the-shelf provider? Is this a topic that's available with a reputable off-the-shelf provider? If it is, off-the-shelf is a great way to gain access to industry-specific training that is well-designed and kept up to date for you. If you're worried about off-the-shelf not looking or feeling like your team created it, many off-the-shelf providers like CMR Institute do offer customization so you get the best of both worlds. Great content that's reviewed and approved by industry experts and that's kept up to date for you automatically. And in CMR's case, we offer those updates for free at no cost to you. And they can be branded for your company so it still feels like you. So when we talk about time and budget and resources, partnering with an off-the-shelf provider can provide you with a way to close some of those gaps. We have great blended learning resources that are ready now for an economical price, and it frees your talent up to focus on those training initiatives that are specific to your company, like we heard from Ryan and Joe. For guidance on partnering with an off-the-shelf provider, check out the Handouts tab that Tim mentioned earlier for a handy worksheet on the top questions you should ask any off-the-shelf provider. For more guidance on whether you should buy or build eLearning, you can also take a look at CMR's Buy or Build tool. Check out the Handouts tab for more information on that as well. As we wrap up today, I'd like to invite you to our second micro webinar on Tuesday, October 30th at 12:30, where we will be discussing results and pull-through. Are you really getting what you need from your training strategy? We're excited to share more about how we partner with companies to successfully pull through learning and support learning application, as well as real-world tips from our clients for measuring results. Thank you all for joining us.
Because this session was jam-packed, I don't necessarily know if we have a ton of questions. Let me see what questions we have. If we don't get to answer the questions, we would love to send those out to the team after we're done. We can send the questions out to everyone. But because the session was so jam-packed, we're really coming to the end of our time together. And so, Tim, I think I will turn it back over to you for closing remarks.
Well, thank you, Brittany and Carrie. Nice job. And Joe and Ryan as well. Thank you for joining us today. As we close out, folks, just a couple of reminders before I move on, that Carrie did mention, or Brittany, I'm sorry, mentioned the next webinar. I'm going to tell you more about that, including how to get to register for that. We're also going to send you a follow-up email about 1 hour from now, and that will include a link to register for the 10:30 webinar as well. So we hope you can join us for that program as well. Speaking of joining us, I wanted to share this with you, just some information on L10's upcoming calendar events here in Q4. We've got several Network After Work mixers coming up next month. I'm going to tell you more about those on a separate slide here in a second. Also, in case you did get to the handouts window, or did not get to the handouts window, June 3rd to 6th, 2019 will be the 48th L10 Annual Conference. We'd love to have you there. It's a great event. It's bigger every year, and we'd love to keep that going. So please do plan to join us in Grapevine, Texas, in the Dallas area next June. We're going to have an L10 Primetime for Trainers core class and master's class taking place in Parsippany, New Jersey in December. The core class December 10th to 12th, and the master's class 13th to 14th of December. If you've not been to these, they're great programs that really will help you when you're presenting to people. So we certainly love to have you check these out again if you're not familiar with them. And then there is this new science of learning that I'm going to tell you about right now. Oops, excuse me. Well, these are brand new half-day workshops that we're just starting, first time ever. On Thursday, November 8th, we're going to have, in the morning, talk about the science and practice of modern learning, and in the afternoon, talking about the science and practice of testing. You can take one or both of the workshops as your schedule allows. So certainly do feel free to check out the L10 website to find more information about this. We'd love to see you in Parsippany. Speaking of seeing you, if you happen to be in the Basking Ridge, New Jersey, Indianapolis, Indiana, or Boston, Massachusetts areas, we've got 3 Network After Work mixers coming up in those cities in November 13th, 14th, and 27th. These are great events. We get a lot of the local people, local L10 members coming out. They hear a program, they get a chance to network with one another, maybe meet some colleagues that they don't know in their own area. They're great programs, and they're great little evening events. We'd love to have you for one if you can. If you are or can be in these cities, please do check them out. You can find more information on the L10 website as well. And finally, I'm going to just end with an invitation to join us for our next webinars. As we've mentioned before, CMR will be back with us with different speakers from the client side on October 30th, talking about, are you getting the results you need from your training strategy? And then we'll be back on November 2nd with a program on gamification. You can find out more information about these upcoming webinars and register at l-10.org/webinars. For those interested in today's recording, again, we're going to send you a link in about 1 hour to the recording. It'll be posted even sooner than that at l-10.org webinars on demand, where you can find all of our archived and on-demand webinars. And finally, my information is here again at the bottom of the screen. If I can help you with anything around today's program, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. Let me remind you as we close out, please do look for that survey on a separate browser window and let us know what you think about today's program and also about the concept of the 30-minute webinars. We'd love to get your input. Do we do these programs for you? So your feedback is always appreciated. As we close out then, I'm going to thank our speakers one more time. Let me thank Carrie Garrett and Brittany Conrad, and also Joe DeLosa and Ryan Malama. Joe, Ryan, Carrie, Brittany, great job. Thank you all very much.
Thank you,
I also want to thank thank you. And I also want to thank our sponsor, CMR Institute, for putting together today's program. And mostly, I'm going to thank all of you in the audience for your time and participation in today's webinar. We look forward to seeing you back here on October 30th. In the meantime, I'll wish you a good rest of your day and a good weekend. Talk to you all soon. Bye-bye, everybody.